unreserved, unrestrained. Your love is wild. Your love is wild for me. It isn't shy. It's unashamed. Your love is proud to be seen with me, to be seen with me. 'Cause you don't give your heart in pieces. You don't hide yourself to tease us. Uncontrolled, uncontained. Your love is a fire. It's burning bright for me. It's not a spark. It's not just a flame. Your love is light that all the world will see. All the world will see that you don't give your heart in pieces.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dulles Church. My name is Andrew Ling. I'm the student pastor here, and we are super excited that you've chosen to join us here today. Now that word here has become a little bit subjective, right? In this world of Zoom meetings and online school and remote working, you could be 45 minutes away or on the other side of the country, and yet you're still there. You're here with us. And we really believe that God has been using the beauty of that technology to continue to build strong, lasting, and intentional relationships. And we've loved that we've been able to do that with you through Church Online. Our next in-person gathering is going to be on March 7th at Lightridge High School. We're going to have worship, we're going to have Dulles Kids, Pastor Brad and Pastor Joshua Simonette are going to be leading us in communion. And speaking of Lightridge, we are also going to be testing out some capabilities of the auditorium. So for the rest of March, those following weeks, we are going to be putting Church Online up on the screen in the auditorium. And if you want to come by and watch it with us in person, you're more than welcome to do that. We would love if you joined us to do those things. And last but not least, this one is probably my favorite because of what it is. We are having our first in-person youth gathering on February 22nd. That's a Monday night at 6 p.m. We're having a bonfire in the Russell's backyard. We're going to just have a good time, conversations, get to know each other, and we're going to have Steve Pasquale's chili and cornbread. So I really hope that you can make it out there. Students, I want to see you guys out there. I want to get to meet you. Again, we are super excited and super glad that you are here joining us today.
Hey, to everyone watching from wherever you're joining us from, welcome. As many of you know, my two favorite chapters in the Bible are Luke 14 and 15. These are pivotal chapters where Jesus has offended religious leaders, and the path toward the cross is unfolding as the Pharisees are beginning to plot Jesus' death. And in Luke 14, Jesus is invited to a Pharisee's home where there's many religious leaders, and they're trying to trap Jesus in his own words or actions to discredit him as a teacher from God, and specifically as the Messiah. And what ensues in chapter 14 is Jesus actually discrediting all of these religious leaders at this dinner by inviting a sick man with a skin disease to join them, who the Pharisees consider to be unclean. Jesus heals the man, then calls out the Pharisees who are competing for the best seats near the chief Pharisee at the head of the table. And then he shocks them. He says, "In my kingdom, the guests of honor who deserve the best seats at the table are like this man who you consider unclean." It was so blasphemous that these Pharisees were losing their minds over Jesus' offensive words. Then in the next chapter, Luke tells us in chapter 15, which Andy Stanley spoke about not long ago, before COVID started. We have a close relationship with North Point Church in Atlanta, as many of you know, and there are many pastors and leaders there who've become such good friends of mine and our churches, and they're very supportive of us here at Dulles. Andy is a teacher who influences many pastors all around the world, and it's a tremendous privilege that Dulles Church is a partner in church vision and life with North Point. I so love how Andy talks about Luke 15. I want us to all be a part of this together in watching this message that Andy delivered about a year ago, just before COVID started. And then I'll be back to join you here at the end to wrap things up.
One of the most baffling things, and I love this, and we talk about this every once in a while, one of the most baffling things about Jesus is that from the perspective of sort of the broad perspective, Jesus showed up as a religious leader, but as you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he just did not gravitate toward religious people. So you have a religious leader that's not gravitating toward religious people. He was sent from God, but he didn't seem to pursue the people that were considered most godly. In fact, the way we say it around here is this, that people who are nothing like Jesus actually liked Jesus, and he liked them back. The people who are nothing like Jesus, nothing like Jesus, actually liked Jesus, and he liked them back. In fact, the group that was most comfortable with the temple and the whole temple worship thing, the group that was most comfortable with all the religious garb, especially if they lived in the vicinity of Jerusalem, the people that were most comfortable with the temple that were most uncomfortable with the temple because of the way it made them feel. They felt ostracized, never ceremonially clean, never match up. The people who were most uncomfortable with the temple seemed to be the most comfortable people with Jesus. In fact, when you read the Gospels, it's really amazing. If you just want to do something fun on, read the book of Mark, Matthew, Mark, and just circle or highlight the word crowd. There is a crowd in almost every chapter in the book of Mark because everywhere Jesus went, he drew a crowd. And these were people who were nothing like him, and yet for some reason, they liked him. And the challenge to me personally with that, and the challenge for all of our collective churches all over the country with that is simply this. The church, and you know this if you grew up in church, the church is his body, which means what was true of Jesus personally should be true of us collectively. That what was true of Jesus personally, that people who were nothing like him liked him, and that people were drawn to him even though they didn't really get him, and they didn't believe everything, and they didn't understand everything. I mean, we're still trying to figure out half of what he taught. That this should be true of us. That what was true of him personally should be true of us collectively. That people should be drawn to believers who are in line and on mission with what Jesus was up to in the world. We should be the most likable people in the community, whether people agree with us or not, or believe with us or not. People should just like us, even though they're nothing like us. And so for 21 years, since we started this whole thing, that's really been our mission. Our mission has been to sort of line up with that posture of Jesus, not individually, because none of us are that good, but collectively, that our mission is to make that a reality. Specifically, we want to be in the habit of resisting the things that make Christianity and church so resistible. That we want to be intentional about resisting personally but corporately, resisting those things that makes the church and makes Jesus and makes Christianity so incredibly resistible. Now, when you open the Gospels, one of the things that sort of jumps out at you, or maybe it hasn't jumped out at you, maybe after I talk about it, it might start jumping out at you, is one of the reasons that people who were nothing like Jesus liked Jesus was because he used different adjectives to describe people. Now, we all have adjectives to describe people, every single one of us. In other words, if I were talking to you personally, we would start talking about people, we could all fill in this blank. Well, you know, those are the rich people, or those are the educated people, or those are the uneducated people, or this is how I say it sometimes, those are just not my people. Do you have people? Let me answer it for you. Yes, you have people. In other words, when you show up at a party, when you show up in a community, you drive around and you kind of get a sense, well, these are my people, these are not my people. You know, I'm polite to them, but I don't want to go fishing with them. I'm polite to them, I don't want to go on vacation with them. They're not my people, but those are my people. So we all have adjectives, you know, good people, bad people, respectful people, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. We've all kind of got adjectives that we use to describe people, and that's not going to change, and that's not going to go away. But what was unique about Jesus, or one of the things that was unique about Jesus, is the way that Jesus prioritized his adjectives. And so people who were nothing like Jesus tended to be drawn to Jesus because of the way he prioritized people and the way he categorized people, and essentially the way that he viewed the world and the way that he viewed the people in the world. For example, Luke tells us this. It says, now the tax gatherers or tax collectors and sinners were all, and I just love this. This is just amazing. This should just cause all of us who've been a Christian a long time to just pause and think. Now, tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. They didn't have to send out stuff. They didn't have to send out flyers. They didn't have to beg people and feed them pizza, you know, and have a band. It's like wherever Jesus went, when Jesus stood up to speak, everybody just gathered around. And these were the labels. You know, these were the adjectives this culture used to describe certain people. Tax collectors, they had a category of their own because they didn't want to offend the sinners. You've heard us talk about that. Tax collectors and sinners. These were the go-to cultural adjectives. So now you got the worst two group of people in the world gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees, they were there too, because they're always, you know, the perpetually trying to trap Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, which is a great word. We should use that more. Muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. We don't get it. You came as a religious leader, but you never invite us over, Jesus. You came as a religious leader, but you hang out with non-religious people. You came as somebody who says you're from God. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. How offensive. But anyway, I mean, we know who you claim to be, and yet all the wrong people are attracted to you, and we have a hard time having an audience with you. You've completely confused us. Do you not understand? Jesus knew that both groups, the tax gatherers and the sinners, and the religious people in his community, they both had the wrong adjectives. Both groups prioritized their adjectives, the way they describe people, in a way that didn't reflect the way their heavenly Father did it. They thought in terms of good people, bad people, acceptable people, unacceptable people, ceremonially clean people, unceremonially clean people, men versus women, men versus children. And all these were adjectives, you could use to describe people, but unfortunately in this culture, those adjectives have crept to the top. These were the primary ways people viewed the people in their community. And Jesus decides, I'm gonna teach both groups at the same time because he was like the master teacher. I'm gonna teach both groups at the same time how to view the world differently and how to view people differently. And I'm gonna teach both groups at the same time how our Heavenly Father views people. So he told them 3 parables, 2 about lost things and 1 about a disrespectful son. These are some of the most famous parables that Jesus taught. So I'm gonna go through them quickly because chances are you've heard them before. Luke chapter 15, if you want to fill in the gaps for yourself and read them again slower later. But here's what he says. He doesn't introduce the topic because he knew better than to do that. He just starts, and he's so amazing. He gets everybody on the same page. This is confusing to us because we're not shepherds, but in this culture, immediately all the men are doing this like, yeah, we don't like you, but yeah, we're following. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. And as soon as he says this, anybody in there that knew anything about shepherding or sheep immediately knew the answer to this question. If you have 100 and you lose one, Jesus says, doesn't he leave the 99? So in our culture, we're thinking, no, I got 99, it's okay if I lose one. That's not how they thought. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And everybody in the audience, Pharisees, teachers of the law, scribes, the sinners, tax gatherers, everybody in the audience, this is the first time they've ever agreed with each other about anything. They're all like, yep, that's what you do. If you lose one, you go look for the one. And when he finds it, Jesus continues, he joyfully puts it on his shoulder and goes home. They're not like, I don't know about joyfully, but yeah, we go home. And then he calls his friends. This seems to be a bit of hyperbole. Maybe they chuckled because he kind of made a bigger deal out of this than perhaps, real shepherds made a big deal. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. And they kind of chuckle because, you don't have a party when you find a lost sheep. But when you find something that's been lost, it's valuable. It's, you feel good. You feel better than you did before it was lost. It's a very strange thing. And his point is this, that when we lose something, isn't this true for all of us? When we lose something of value, we focus on what's lost to the neglect of what's unlost. That's what we do. Hey, men, if your wife or your fiance calls you and says, oh no, I've lost my engagement ring. And then she says, but don't worry, I have my cell phone. So what? Yeah, I lost my engagement ring, but I haven't lost my cell phone, obviously. It's like, so what? I mean, the fact that you still have your cell phone does nothing for me emotionally because you've lost your engagement ring. When you lose something of value, the fact that you have a bunch of unlost stuff, how helpful is that, right? Years ago, I think I told you this story. Years ago when my kids were little, we camped a lot. So I had all 3 kids out camping. Sandra's at home having a break, And I lost Andrew, our oldest. When I say lost, we were at Fort Mountain State Park. I don't know if you've been there, if you live around the state of Georgia or Tennessee. There's a canyon. Our state has a canyon. You should see this. It's a canyon. And you camp at the top of the canyon. And there's this ravine. I mean, it's like, you can't even believe you're in the southeast. It's amazing. So Andrew and a friend had gotten ahead of us. We did a little side trail to do an overlook. It's, 1,000 feet. And then Andrew's not there. And if you've ever lost a child temporarily, it starts right here and you think, breathe. And then you say, hey, Andrew. And then you start screaming and you yelling. And then I'm running down a trail, yelling, because he's lost. I can't find him and it's dangerous, And I wasn't even thinking about my other 2 kids. I don't even know where they were. They were lost too at that point because I'm running down the trail. But imagine the phone call. Hey, Sandra, I got some bad news. We lost Andrew, but I still have Garrett and Allie. See, it doesn't help. When you lose something of great value, the fact that you got a bunch of unlost stuff is of no help at all, right? And Jesus goes on because they get this, everybody's agreeing. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner. Now, this is very offensive to both groups, but Jesus is so good. This is offensive to both groups. I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. And over the sinners are like, whoa. Than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. And the Pharisees who think that God just thinks about them all the time are like, whoa. What do you mean? You mean God's like more interested in him who I wouldn't even have in my home than me who does everything right? Before they can, leave, Jesus continues because he's about to tell them something about his adjectives. And he's just giving them a few clues, but he keeps going. Or suppose, before he loses the crowd, and he speaks to the women this time because he's so good. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one, to which we're like, so what? But this was a big deal. And if you grew up in church, maybe you know this. That oftentimes there's 2 or 3 ways to take this, but one way was that parents would give their daughters a dowry, and they would have these 10 somewhat valuable coins, sometimes very little, and they would sew them into a headdress, and basically it was like bait, like if you get me, you get these. Date me, and these come along with me. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of weird, I know. So that's one version of maybe what these coins meant, so there's 2 or 3 things, but the point was, these were 10 very valuable coins to this particular woman that represented something so important that she would not leave home with 9. In other words, you don't just move the other 9 around and kind of center them up and go out. If you started with 10, you don't leave home until you have 10. Doesn't she, Jesus says, he's so good, doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And all the women are like, yep. And all the men who've, given their daughters, 10 coins are all like, yeah, you better don't leave home without that coin. Yeah, you stay there. And when she finds it, what does she do? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. And again, it's kind of hyperbole, a little bit of exaggeration, but he's going to the emotion of when you lose something of value, when you find it. I mean, isn't it amazing? If you have no emotion right now, women, about your purse. You have no emotion. But if you lose your purse and then find your purse, rejoice with me, I found, right? Suddenly there's emotion around something, not because you have it, but because you lost it and you found it. This is a powerful, powerful human emotion. And Jesus is driving deep into this. He calls the neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost coin. Why? We know this. Jesus is just appealing to broad human emotion. Because, isn't this true? When we lose something of great value, we go to great lengths to find it. When we lose something of great value, we go to great lengths to find it. And all the women in the crowd are like, yeah. But what's he talking about? Now, we kind of know because we kind of read the background, But this is just a group of people listening to Jesus tell more stories, and they're like, these are so interesting. Does anyone have any idea what he's talking about? Yeah, we chased down the 1 sheep. Yeah, we chased down the 1 coin. But what's the point? Is there a punchline? Is this supposed to be comedy? I mean, where are we going with this? So he's got their interest, like he has ours. And then he tells them the story, that famous story about a father and a rebellious son. A son, he had 2 sons, and the younger son, you may know this, you've heard this. The younger son, essentially, these are my words, not in the parable. Essentially, the younger son goes to the father, and the father is wealthy, and the younger son essentially says to the father, Dad, when you die, I'm gonna get half of everything. Well, it just seems like you're gonna live forever. I mean, by the time you die, I'm gonna be so old, it won't even matter that I get half this stuff. I want the stuff now. I got plans. So Dad, look, let's pretend like you died. That's how this story impacted Jesus' audience. Dad, let's pretend you're dead and I get half of what I'm gonna get anyway. Go ahead and give it to me now. Now I'm telling you, even as a father, you hear that. Imagine one of your children coming and saying, Dad, thanks for the car and you got me a college education, but I'm like, I want the real stuff, I want half the company now. I want you to liquidate the company. I want it now. Dad, could you and Mom sell the house, rent, and just go ahead and give me half the value? I mean, what would that say about your son or your daughter? It would tell you the same thing it told the people listening to Jesus' parable, that this son was gone relationally long before he left home. I mean, this relationship was broken. Dad, you just won't die. So go ahead and pretend like you're dead and give me half of what I'm gonna get anyway. And the father, this is the amazing thing, if you heard the story. The father wanted to reconnect with the son so much that he chose the shortest route back. The father wants to reconnect with the son relationally so much. I mean, he knows the relationship's broken. I mean, the conversation is sort of the pinnacle of a bunch of other conversations that probably went on in the normal home, right? I mean, he knows the son is distant. The son never takes his earbuds out. The son never participates at dinner. The son is gone. He's just physically there. And the father wants him back. Not his body, the relationship. And so he chooses for the shortest route back. He funds his departure. And what the audience heard when Jesus said this was that the Father loved the Son, don't miss this, the Father loved the Son more than he loved his own reputation. And for that culture, they summed that father up as a fool. This is when you need to go to Leviticus and find that hidden verse that says, stone the rebellious children, because this kid deserves to be stoned. And in the story, Jesus said, the father says, okay, Let's pretend like I'm dead. I'll liquidate half the estate and you can have your half now. And I'm telling you, it was silent in Jesus' audience because the point was pretty clear. Here's the dad who's willing to lose him physically, lose him spatially, lose him to potentially win him. And you know the story, the son, liquidates everything and packs up and kind of hugs his dad and mom awkwardly, and probably the older brother nowhere around, and he takes off and he goes to a distant country, we don't know where, and he just went somewhere cool and got a condo and a car and cat, just he's living the life, Time goes by and time goes by and time goes by. And eventually, you know the story. In fact, this is your story, some of you, right? This is a story you hope is playing out with your prodigal son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter. And eventually the son is overwhelmed. So eventually the son is overwhelmed by the realization that he is disconnected. Eventually, not initially, eventually the son in the story is overwhelmed by the realization that he's lost. And he's missing home, wondering if home is missing him. He's missing home and he's wondering, I wonder if home is missing me, and I don't think home is missing me. So I think if I'm gonna go back, I can't go back expecting to reclaim my position as son. Maybe if I go back, they will hire me, my dad will hire me as a servant because he treats his servants better than I'm being treated where I am now. Because he'd gone through all the wealth, gone through all the money, shamed his father, and imagine this, dads. All the wealth that his father took a lifetime, or maybe 2 lifetimes, maybe it was generational wealth, all the wealth it took a generation or 2 to accumulate, this son had spent it within a few weeks, months, or maybe years. We don't know. He's missing home, but he's wondering if home is missing him. And in Jesus' audience sits people like us that they would say, I think I'm far from God. And I would like to not be far from God, but I don't know if God misses me. I don't know if there's a place for me. I don't know that I'll ever measure up. I know I will never be as good as them. I don't even want to be as good as them. I think they're all hypocrites. Is there a version of good that's not like that kind of good, but a different kind of good? Because I know I'm disconnected from God, and I know I'm kind of far from God, whatever that means. And yeah, I meet people who are close to God, and they kind of got something going on I don't have, but I'm missing that, but is that missing me? Whew. And if you'd surveyed the people in Jesus' audience, the scribes and Pharisees and the religious leaders would say, God doesn't miss them. He's disgusted by them. And if you were to ask them, they'd say, God's not missing us. He's probably disgusted by us. And you know how the story goes, hopefully. So the son takes a chance, and he got up, and he went to his father. And what happens next in the parable blows the minds and all the categories and all the adjectives of Jesus' audience, because they didn't share Jesus' adjectives. They did not see people the way that Jesus saw people. They did not have the categories. They did not share his categories. They didn't fill in the blanks the same way Jesus filled in the blanks when it comes to people. This is so powerful. Maybe this is emotional to you. Maybe this next statement is why you're watching or why you're here. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and it was filled with, and it all depends on how you prioritize your adjectives. Disgust, embarrassment. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. And Jesus' audience gasped. Compassion? Have you already forgotten what's happened in your own story, Jesus? I mean, no father would feel compassion toward a son who had done that, to which Jesus would have said, you're exactly right, if the father in the story shared your adjectives about people. and saw the world that you see, way that you see people. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, but wait, come on, wait. Oh, Jesus, hold on, time out, question. So the father sees the son, filled with compassion, runs toward the son, throws his arms around him, but Jesus, I have a question. Why, when the son was leaving, why, when the son had his back to his father, did the father not, from that same distance, run and throw his arm around the son? Why does he let the son go and he doesn't chase him down and throw his arms around him and say, stay? But now the son's coming back and it's the same son, it's the same distance, it's the same two people, but now he's running toward the son to throw his arms around him and bring him back. Why? What's the difference? And this is Jesus' point. And this impacts all of us, whether you're a Christian or non-Christian or moving one way or the other. Because Jesus' point was that the Father desired a relationship. The Father desired a connection. The Father desired a connection, a relationship, not a GPS coordinate. It was not about not knowing where the Son was. Like, where's the Son? Because somebody, that's not it. It's not spatially. It's relationally. That what the Father wanted more than anything in the world was not the Son living in his house, but to be connected with the Son. And when the Father saw the connection being made, when he saw the disconnected Son begin to reconnect, he ran in this direction. And this totally freaked out everybody in the audience. And he kissed him. Now, this freaked him out because if you remember the story, when the son ran out of money, he went to work for a farmer and took care of what? Anybody remember? Pigs. And these are Jewish people. I mean, this story was this was a worst upon worst case scenario. He hugs his dirty son and he kisses him, and the audience gasped. And you know why they gasped? Because they didn't understand Jesus' adjectives. They didn't understand how Jesus viewed people. In their minds, it was clean, dirty, acceptable, unacceptable, respectful, disrespectful. And the son failed on all of those accounts. But Jesus didn't see people that way. He still doesn't see people that way. Look up here. And if we are his body, we must not see people that way. The son said to him, this is the fun part of the story. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. He's memorized a little script. He had a long time to think about it. It's like, when I get there, I'm not gonna ask to be a son, I'm gonna ask to be a servant. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. In other words, Dad, I've been lost on purpose. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. I have sinned. I did all of this on purpose. And the dad's like, I know, and I knew, but you're back on purpose. So let's move ahead. But the father said to him, remember this little speech? But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger. He's reestablished as the son, sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf that we've been saving up for a party. We're about to have a party. Kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. And now Jesus gives us and his audience his adjectives. This is how he sees people. This is how he sees you. And you and you. This is how he sees me. This is how he sees you. And there's lots of things to describe you. There's lots of things to describe me. But if we elevate, if we prioritize, this is how your Savior or your potential Savior sees the people of the world. For this son of mine was in this column, and now he is in this column. Dead and alive. He wasn't physically, it's just a figure of speech. Let me be specific. He was lost to me. He wasn't lost like we couldn't find him. We knew where he was. I mean, his reputation. I mean, every other day one of my friends is walking up and saying, you probably don't want to know this, but have you heard that your son, I've heard. I know. I don't want to hear any more stories about my son. They knew where he was, but he was dead and now he's alive. He was lost to me and now he's found to me. He was disconnected and now he is connected. And that means we throw a party. Look up here. This is how your Savior and my Savior sees everybody in your neighborhood, everybody at work, everybody at your middle school, everybody at your high school, everybody in first period, everybody in your Algebra 2 class, everybody on the third floor and the first floor, the people that are welcoming you in the parking lot, the security people, the people that, hey, I'd love to be that rich someday. Every single person you are ever eyeball to eyeball with, Jesus would say, hey, there are a lot of ways I could describe them, And many of those descriptions would be true, but let me tell you how I view the world. There are people who are connected to their Father in heaven, and there are people who are disconnected from their Father in heaven. And my primary concern is not the connected. I know where they are, and I'm grateful that we're connected. My priority, my passion, the thing that brought me to earth to begin with was to reconnect the disconnected to their Father in heaven. And see, this answers the question, why in the world would Jesus, a religious leader, spend so much time with irreligious people? In other words, why would Jesus, or I put it this way, I'll answer the question. The reason Jesus spent so much time with disconnected people is because they were disconnected. The reason Jesus was drawn to people who were far from God is because they were far from God. And we are his body. And what was true for him, especially this part, should be true of us. Now, here's why I talk about it and why I'm talking about it today. You see, and you know this if you grew up in church or if you're new to church, the gravitational pull of the local church, every local church, this one, all of our churches, every church, the gravitational pull of the local church is always toward the paying customer. It's always toward the connected. It's always toward the people who know where to park and how to get their kids in early and find a seat so you can beat the traffic. We all just gravitate that way. The gravitational pull of the local church and the programming of the church and the budgeting of the church and the way we behave, the gravitational pull is always toward the 99, not toward the 1. And so what that means, beginning with me, I'm not pointing my fingers, beginning with me, we all, individually and collectively, run the risk of misprioritizing our adjectives when it comes to how we see people. And before long, we see good people and bad people. Conservative people and liberal people, young people and old people, my people, not my people, my kids' friends, not my friends. My friends used to be before long, we just adopt all the cultural norms, all the categories. Next thing you know, we're talking about and viewing the world just like everybody else, and your Father in heaven says, hey, look up here, look up here, look up here. It's not how I see the world. That's not how I divide the world. Because the adjectives you use the most will eventually get down to your emotions. And you'll be mean to people who don't agree with you. And you'll say bad things about people who don't see the world the way you see it. And your Father in heaven says, when you've done that, you have joined the ranks of the Pharisees. And you've joined the ranks of the people that think because I'm connected and because God is happy with me, maybe someday everybody else can catch up with me. And your Father in heaven did not send his Son into this world to collect all the connected people so they could have a big, happy collection party. He says, you know what my concern is? My concern is the disconnected people. My only fear, and you ask our staff, if you've been around for a while, I'm telling you, we've been doing this 21 years. I've only had one real big concern. It's not been financial. It's not been, are we going to find a place to meet? It's not going to be, what am I going to preach on? Actually, I worry about that a lot. But that's not been my biggest concern. My biggest concern from day one, and still my biggest concern, is that we would drift to become a group of successful, big, full, rich churches who are so content with who's here that we would forget that the eyes of our Father are on the road. They're on the people who are not connected. That we would lose our concern for the disconnected people, not the down and out people. See, those are some more categories. Not the down and out, the disconnected.
Man, I just love this talk by Andy so much. It's so close to my heart and our hearts here at Dulles. Years ago, we had a guy attending our church who came every week, and he said he loved the people of Dulles. He loved our music. He'd tell me that he loved me. But he kept asking for 3 changes. He didn't understand why we catered to outsiders, he'd say, which we actually don't do. We include outsiders in our gatherings and our language. We're very intentional about that. But he wanted church to be longer in time, like a couple hours. He wanted our worship to be more intense, he'd say. And he wanted me to teach more from the Old Testament so he could feel more like he did growing up in church as a kid and a teenager. And one night, this all came to a head when he invited me to his house. It was kind of intimidating. He had a very nice home office. His desk was clean, nothing on it except what looked like a checkbook. And he told me again how he feels I'm catering to new people or outsiders when I explain things like who the Pharisees were, or when I take the time to explain what the word gospel means, that it's the good news of Jesus, and why I don't use words like born again. It really bugged him. So he challenged me by pushing a check across to me when I was trying to explain to him that we're including outsiders, and this is very important to me and to all of us at Dulles. He pushed this check across the desk to me, made out to me, it said to Brad Russell for $1,000. And he said, I want you to have this. You're working 2 jobs. I want to help you. The only thing I'm asking is that you not focus so much anymore on people outside, like new people. And I pushed the check back to him, and I told him I could never accept a check like this, because while our church will never be perfect, or we'll never have it all figured out, we exist precisely to care about unchurched people. Unchurched people understanding who Jesus is. So whether you're new to church or maybe you consider yourself an insider, I'm inviting you to see people the way Jesus saw them, by seeing yourself as the lost sheep that he came to rescue and love. And I want to just encourage you, wherever you are, to pray this simple prayer. Jesus, today I give you my life. I'm giving you my life. Okay, now to all of us, we have 2 weeks, 14 days to think about who we're going to invite to our next in-person at Light Ridge. And if you're not in the area or you're not comfortable, who you're going to invite to watch with you as we talk to Joshua Simonette and take communion together. And then we have 6 weeks till Easter to think about, who does God care so much about? Who does he want you and I to be worth inviting? Someone that we see worth inviting. Someone that we are given an opportunity to invite to join us for Easter. It's hard to believe Easter's 6 weeks from now. I mean, we're getting pretty close. And I really want to challenge all of you today and this week to be thinking about and talking to God about, who is it in my life, who is it that you will put in my path that I should offer a warm invitation to either come with us in person 2 weeks from now for our Communion Sunday on March 7th, or 6 weeks from now on Easter Sunday, or to just watch along with you online with us each and every week. I love you guys. If you prayed the prayer giving your life to Jesus today, would you just let us know? You can contact me through our website, or you can click our connect button here if you're watching live. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you online this week.